Hi, can you state your name and your title?
My name is Lloyd Tyrone Washington. Currently, I'm the president of the Durkeeville Historical Society.
Okay, what does that entail?
That entails somewhat of being a head cook and bottle washer. You fill in on a lot of gaps that you have to. The reason for that is the age of our members go up to 85 years old,
Okay.
which has its advantages and disadvantages.
Okay.
The disadvantage, the last party dance we had for the seniors, for our historical members, and it was a fundraiser. It was over with by 11 o'clock.
Okay.
And they were all going home because they had to go to church tomorrow. So we didn't burn the midnight hour on that one.
Okay.
But the advantage of that is when we bring college students come in, especially from the University of North Florida and SCCJ downtown, we can introduce them to history.
Okay.
For example, Mrs. Bell. Mrs. Bell, when blacks would come to town, they had, because of the Jim Crow laws, they could not stay in hotels, so they would stay in other blacks' homes. So Mrs. Bell, every time Mary McCall Bethune would come to town, she would stay with the Bells. So I was talking to Ms. Bell about it recently. She said, well, one thing for sure, we know we'll be using a good civil when Mrs. Bethune is here. So that was one of the things we talked about. That's the advantage of having with the age bracket it has. We can actually introduce these young people to history itself.
Okay.
And that's an advantage, and that's a disadvantage. A lot of stuff falls on me because an 80-year-old man is not going to be running around here like I do.
Yeah.
And next question.
Okay. So how did you get involved with the society?
Being nosy.
Being nosy?
Being nosy. I had a friend of mine named Paul Tutwiler was the acting president, and we were walking around Dirty Oaks, and he told me, come on, I want to show you something. And I've always had an interest in history.
Okay.
And so we walked in, and I saw some of the things, and I met some of the people, and I just I said, I might give a little time here. I had some time on my hands, and I decided to do that. And in the interim, Paul had some health issues, and he resigned as president, and Dr. Carolyn Williams came on board. And I just found him to be a very fascinating person, and I stayed.
My condolences on your loss, Miss Williams.
Well, Dr. Williams, number one, I was the most sharp person of the group because my term was supposed to be a short term.
Okay.
Because I said, okay, Doc. I called her Doc. Because she said, call me Dr. Williams. I just had too much respect for her to call her Carol.
Okay.
So I always said, we'll compromise and I'll call you Doc.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. So Doc said, Lloyd, I'm not feeling well. We were having a fundraiser, fish fry. And she said, lock up and I'm going home. I said, okay. Well, when I went to check my emails on Monday morning, I found out she was already in the hospital. And by the time I checked my email on Wednesday of that week, they found out that she had terminal cancer.
Oh my gosh.
So it was an interesting 2.5 years. I had to put it together as president because it was something, like I said, I was only because she was ill, I was expecting her to come back.
Okay.
And so I said, well, Doc, I'll just handle this until you get back.
Okay.
So we voted me into president, and Pam Singleton's dad, Warner Singleton, was the vice president, and he wanted to move on to something. So Pam was voted in as vice president, and that's Pam Singleton.
Yes.
And so we've both been president and vice president. There have been certain challenges we had to address, and always will be challenges.
Okay.
Fundraisers and work constantly in a fundraising mode because of the fact that everybody is a volunteer. We have an established person.
Okay.
So when we do fundraisers, we had gotten to the point where at one point we thought we were going to have to shut this place down.
Oh, wow.
It was, we had $0 in the bank account, and we had about $1,000 worth of bills looking at us. So we've come a long way to still be here at this point. The organization totally is 15 years old. So we've had these last 6 years have really been interesting. We've had to do a lot of changing, a lot of things are moving around as far as our budgets is concerned, and we're still here. So I don't know if it's just the good Lord willing, we'll still be here 12 more years. Hopefully, we will be able to get staff in here, which would really help us out a great deal. More money won't help hurt anything, but to move forward. We would love to get a larger place. And this building was one of the things that Dr. Williams worked hard to do to get this building from the Housing Authority. So when we had to move from the original spot across the street from the JB Small Park, we were up and we were put away for 3 years. We were put away in storage. So and that's very, Dr. Williams did. It's hard to keep an organization together when they're in storage. So we had to have monthly meetings. We had to have a lot of things to keep the organization going, and she did all of that. But like I said, once she became ill, and she still was my job then was to raise funds. And I would go and talk to Seaport Coastline, Time Union at the time, and I would always go through this spiel of what we were doing, all of this and all of that, and what we would like to do. And the last thing I would say was, our curator was Dr. Carolyn Williams. Well, when I mentioned that, I know Carolyn, here's a check. So what we decided to do was change this thing all the way around.
Okay.
So I'd go in and tell about 5 minutes about the building, and the next day come out of my office, Dr. Carolyn Williams. Check came out, and I cut half of my spiel down.
Wow.
Because most of these people knew who she was, and it didn't hurt at all. And plus, I told Dr. Williams, I'm selling you like a cheap suit. She looked up at me, and she was every bit of 5 foot, nothing. And she looked up at me, what do you mean? And I told her what to do, and she just started laughing. But it did help as far as the fundraising was concerned. But once she became ill, we had a fish fry, we did the reorganization of everything in here, our bills, and if we got to the point, if there were nobody in a certain part of the building, the lights was off, the air conditioning was off. We only ran what we had to run to make it feel comfortable for people here. If they were in here, if they weren't, then not come on.
So can you tell me a little bit about the reflections on your wall?
Reflections. The thing on the wall is that if you're a Durkeeville person, you know everything. When you run into that person who comes in and say, oh, my mother used to live in that house right there, or I grew up playing in that park right there, or yeah, I played with the ladies and they do still come through. It's interesting. Oh yes, or I graduated from this college that was on Myrtle Avenue, which was part of the Durkee area. So it's hard to just say, well, we've got them classified in different areas and different activities, and the reason for that is we need more space. So these, what you see on the wall, are just a small smidgen of what we have. We've got in the process of you don't you don't slap the hand that gave you a house. But one of the things they did was they eliminated a storeroom, which we need desperately. But I said we still have the building, so so that would be grateful for one thing, and that we have it. But sooner or later, hopefully, if we can get some funds in here, we would love to add on to the building, if nothing else, to add more for storage space, because all these cabinets here, we would use 2 or 3 of them. We could almost we're going to change this is the newest exhibit. This exhibit has not been up long.
The cabinets?
No, the exhibit on the wall.
Oh, okay.
And all these stuff that's in the cabinet come out of it. The stuff you see on the wall was once in the cabinet. And once we get it, and there's just so much stuff in these cabinets, and in these 2 rooms we have, we can change it at any time.
Okay.
The question was, how do we get young people involved? At one point, we had a junior Durkeeville Historical Society, and it went well for a while. But we had to keep them involved. Matter of fact, we have a tape which they made about the first 6 black policemen, and we had to constantly keep them involved in something, because after a while it just teetered out, because I don't know what it is about our history. We don't want to know about it. We don't care about it. And we're losing it because of that negativity.
And when you see different cultures like Mr. Robinson, he is so enthusiastic about the history. It makes me feel ashamed.
Well, you got to realize Mr. Robinson has not had to live under what we had to live under.
Yeah.
He's a very intelligent, very articulate person, and that's the reason I went after him. And I really did. I needed a historian here. He saw us on website, Facebook, or something. He called, asked me to bring his class over, and when that opportunity came, I just jumped on with both feet. Asked him, would you want to be our historian?
Okay.
And could you be our historian? And he said he had to think about it. And, which is fair, I can understand that. But he has this, he's a researcher, which Dr. Williams was. That's the thing that, excuse me, the thing that got me with, I like about Dr. Williams. If she could sit here in this place all day long and just simply do research, she would be happy.
Wow.
He's a lot like her. He has that ability to, and I've stuck my foot in my mouth a couple of times since he's been here, and he has checked it tactfully. He gave me a piece of paper and I read it and told me, oh, okay. We corrected that mistake I made. And so he does it in a very tactful way, but he tries to keep us all on the, if we're going to tell anybody anything about this place, we want it to be the truth. We have one issue that we deal with, and that's when it comes to the Negro League ball players.
Mm-hmm.
They had a group called the Barnstormers. A lot of times the Negro League team would come in and play, but they wouldn't have enough people to make the team. So they would have a list of players from Jacksonville, they'll find players here, to fill out their rosters.
Okay.
And so that still doesn't mean that you're a Negro League ball player. You're at that point, you're considered a barnstormer.
Got it.
And just because you played one game with them, don't make you a full Negro Leaguer. You came in and subbed for them for one game. And you have a lot of guys that have done that, and several of them have lived here in Jacksonville. And since we do salute Reverend Hare, Buster Hare, and Art Hamilton, who's who actually called for Satchel Paige. They think that we're sort of snobbing the rest of them. But the thing is, you have to have the documentation to prove what you've done. And those two have the documentation. We recently found Mr. Odell Morris. He played for the Kansas City Clown near the end of the Negro League. And just thought about something I called him the other day. And,
That's
but
fine.
he's also been ill lately, so that's what they call it. And so they look at us like we're not, but we would rather say you're a barnstormer, which to me is no slight, because to play with the caliber ball players the Negro League had meant a lot.
Okay.
Say that you can get out there and play as well as they did mean a lot. It's just unfortunately they were near the end of it. In 1955 it was teetering out. In 1960s they were basically, I think the last Negro League last game that was played under the banner of the Negro League was back in 1968.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
that's a little bit.
Okay.
As far as collecting the artifacts, they've come where people have donated them to them from their families, and then some of them we literally, like Coach J.B. Small, the young man who was selling the house, he came by and said, "You all want this stuff?" And I would happen to be at the center at the time, and I said, "Yeah." And so he went and we got a lot of the stuff out of his car. Then we also went to the, he said, "Come on around here because I got more stuff to go." And I was going up one side of the street, and the garbage man was coming down the other side of the street. And that's how we got a lot of stuff from J.P. Small. A lot of stuff was donated to us by the people, and a lot of it was brought to us by garbage men, where it had been thrown in the garbage can.
Wow.
So we have like I said, we don't have a storage place. I was talking to one of the members of the staff of the Ritz Theater. They have the same problem.
Okay.
People think they're trying to be snobbish, even think we're trying to be snobbish, but we have to deal with lack of storage.
Okay.
When you start talking about, yes, I would love to take that, but then the family gets all like right now. I got a lot of stuff in my house, in my closet, that should be up on the wall, but we don't have the storage space. And if I keep taking stuff in my house, I won't have the storage space. So it's going to be things we need to do. Like I said, when we moved in, we were grateful. We thought this would do what we wanted to do. And now we've been here a few years, and now we're talking about some kind of way of raising funds to get a bigger building. And because we just need a lot more space now.
Okay. Okay, let me pause.
This part of Durkeeville was called Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill was the rich and affluent suburb of Durkeeville. This is where all the rich folks lived, the lawyers, the engineers, the architects, the doctors. This is where they lived. It was in Sugar Hill. They all had big mansions, and they were very well-to-do. Sugar Hill, you can see it, I don't know if you can close in on this map or not. Durkeeville is here. Sugar Hill is this red area here. Unfortunately, Sugar Hill was pretty much destroyed by I-95 coming through, 8th Street being expanded, the 20th Street Expressway, and then the growth of the hospital there at Shands pretty much destroyed most of Sugar Hill. The last large mansion that you can still see is this one. We have a picture of one of the one of the sororities at the hospital actually took it over, so they preserved it. And this is at the corner of 8th Street and 95. You can go and look at that and get a feel for what Sugar Hill must have been like.
That's Bishop Tuke's house, right? Yes.
So, but Sugar Hill, and so one of the most famous residents of Sugar Hill is this man here, A.L. Lewis, Abraham Lincoln Lewis. And he was always known as by A.L. He was the first millionaire, first black millionaire in the South, and he was instrumental in the National Negro Business League, where he was one of the founding members, working with Booker T. Washington. He founded the Afro-American Insurance Corporation here in Jacksonville, which was a huge employer of blacks during the 1900s. He also founded American Beach, which was the premier African-American beach during the days of segregation. Segregation meant that blacks were either not allowed on the beach at all, or they were only allowed during certain hours, except for American Beach. That's where everyone went, and it was such a popular resort that people came from hundreds of miles to go to American Beach. Sadly, in 1964, two things happened. The Civil Rights Bill passed, which meant you had to integrate all the beaches, and Hurricane Dora came through and pretty much destroyed it.
Oh.
So what is left is, there's very little left anymore. Actually, Lewis's granddaughter, Maveen Betch, was called the Beach Lady. She led the fight to preserve what's left of American Beach. She unfortunately has passed here just recently. Or his other two grandchildren, one is Johnny Cole, who is a jazz pianist and drummist, and his other granddaughter, Jonetta Betch Cole, was the first woman president of any major university in the country. She is now the curator for the African American Museum at the Smithsonian in Washington. Civil rights movement. He was
Harry T. Moore.
He was a Harry T. Moore. He was the local president of the NAACP. He was instrumental in getting equal pay for black and white teachers. He was the president of the Teachers Association. And for his troubles on Christmas Day of 1951, somebody put a bomb under his bedroom window and blew up him and his wife there in bed. And nobody was ever caught. So he was considered the first martyr. Central to the Durkeeville experience would be this man, J.P. Small. James P. Small was the longtime coach at Stanton High School. 33 years he coached, and he coached everything: basketball, baseball, track, football, even the glee club, the home ec club, the cheerleaders. If you played at Stanton, you played for Coach Small. He was such an integral part of the community that when the ballpark was redone in the 80s, the Durkee Park was renamed J.P. Small Park after him. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but the J.P. Small Park is the center of the Durkeeville community for a whole lot of reasons. But that's for Coach Small. Okay, stepping forward here.
Yes.
Now, as you can tell from Sugar Hill and from A.L. Lewis and that group, there was a thriving black community here in the 20s. And when the Great Depression hit, then the FDR and the WPA in particular, they looked around at the cities and they said, we have a problem. We have a problem because we have slums, we have tenements, we have ghettos, we have horrible, horrible housing, and we need to do something. What they did is they looked around and they found Durkeeville. Durkeeville having a thriving black community already, and it didn't hurt to be close to Warm Springs, Georgia, where FDR was living. Durkeeville was picked to be the pilot project, and Durkeeville became the very first public housing in the United States. These are all pictures from 1936 and 1937 when the Durkeeville projects were built. And they were so successful that the lessons learned here were copied all over the country. But Durkeeville was the first.
Okay.
Moving forward here. Now, Myrtle Avenue. Myrtle Avenue is right outside here. Myrtle Avenue was the black downtown. During the days of segregation, blacks were not wanted downtown. They could go, but they were subject to scrutiny and to being treated as second-class citizens. For example, one of the big department stores downtown had a bargain basement. Blacks were expected to go in the door and downstairs immediately so that the white folks didn't have to see them. And blacks were not allowed to try on hats or shoes. They had to take whatever they out. They were not allowed to try them on. So that's the way blacks were treated. The response to that, areas like Myrtle Avenue and Florida Avenue over on the west side became the black downtown. This is where black businesses went to cater to black. So Axe Handle Saturday was Jacksonville's brush with the civil rights movement. And basically there was a series of sit-ins in the downtown lunch counters that were done by a group of Jacksonville kids. And the sit-in is no more than they would go to Kresge's or Woolworth's and sit down at the lunch counter and wait to be served. And of course they weren't served because they're not supposed to be there. If you were black, you're supposed to take out only or go around the back or something. But these guys were pointing out the inequity of it. Well, this rankled some white supremacist types. And on the Saturday, August 13th, 1960, there was a sit-in planned for Woolworths, and the Ku Klux Klan delivered hundreds and hundreds of axe handles to Hemming Plaza downtown. And for those who don't know what axe handle is, think baseball bat, about the same size and shape. And the police mysteriously disappeared, and hordes of whites went downtown, picked up axe handles, and converged upon where the people were going to sit in. And when the sit-in folks were suspicious, they moved to another place. They weren't even there. When that happened, the white people started being Negro Leagues played here. The Negro Leagues actually had our team here was the Jacksonville Redcaps, which were here for 2 years. However, even when the Redcaps had gone defunct, the Negro Leagues continued to play here. They played exhibitions here. We were a regular stop. So all of the big name teams came here. The Kansas City Monarchs, the Indianapolis Clowns, the New York Black Yankees, the Boston Black Sox. They all came here and they played. One of the most memorable times, in fact, was in 1926 when the Black Yankees played the White Yankees in an exhibition game. Satchel Paige versus Babe Ruth. It was quite a time. But the ballpark, now, not only does baseball, which is what its primary purpose is, still Stanton and Edward Waters College still play baseball there. But in addition to that, they played Golden Gloves. The first Golden Gloves boxing tournament was held at the park. The first 13 Florida-Georgia football games were held at the park. Also, the first East-West Shrine Classic held at the park. And for several years, there was a game called the Flower Bowl, where historically black colleges played each other on New Year's Day, and that was held at the park as well. All of those were other events that were held at the park in addition to baseball. So this was and in addition to all of that, it was also a social place. Weddings that were held there every year. Charlie Haas Singleton brought the Follies from Broadway and they played there. It was also a place where civil rights meetings were held during the 60s. So the park is very central to all of Durkeeville.
Do you know who Charlie Haas Singleton is?
You're about to if you don't. Now, another interesting thing here is the Ladies of the Links. I love these folks. The Ladies of the Links were founded in 1946 at the Lincoln Golf and Country Club. That was another. Actually, the Lincoln Golf and Country Club was founded by A.L. Small as well, A.L. Lewis as well. I mean,
okay.
He discovered he couldn't play golf anywhere, so he made his own golf course. He did. But the Ladies of the Link were founded in 1948, and this is very neat. Gertrude Stiles, who was called the First Lady of Golf, she was one of the founders. We have many of their trophies and stuff here. But the Ladies of the Links, at the time in 1948, women were not allowed to play golf. There was no LPGA. So not only are women playing golf, but black women are playing golf. And so they're hitting two stereotypes, and they're still excelling. I think this is just a marvelous story. Okay. So, moving right along. Durkeeville was very important in the civil rights movement. Jacksonville and Durkeeville both are. One of our native sons here, A. Philip Randolph. He was actually born in Crescent City, but he's raised in Oakland area on the west side, on the east side, and he is famous for many things. He was the first he organized the first black union, the Brotherhood of Pullman Car Porters. He was the first black man to be in the AFL-CIO organization. He was the first black president of the AFL-CIO. He was also he organized 2 separate marches on Washington. Well, the first one was in 1940, but he had a personal meeting with Franklin Roosevelt who asked him to not march instead. And instead, in order for calling off the march, what Roosevelt did was issue Executive Order 8802. And Executive Order 8802 was immensely important. It desegregated the defense industries. If you had a defense contract, and we were going into a war, you had a defense contract, you had to have an integrated workforce. And the government would check it and it had teeth and made sure that it was integrated. So this was an incredibly important thing. So, I'm sorry?
I was going to say, this is Bayard Rustin.
Uh-huh.
I went to his high school in New York City,
No
the
kidding.
Bayard Rustin High School for the Humanities.
Him and Randolph were
Yeah,
buddies.
yes.
Yeah. But let me tell you the second march that he organized was the one in 1963, for the 1963 March in Washington for Poor People. And that one did come off, very well received. This is a picture of him at his speech at the Lincoln Memorial. He was the organizer, he was the keynote speaker, he was the first speaker of the day, and no one knows he was there. Because the last speaker of the day was Martin Luther King in I Have a Dream speech, and that's all that you hear about. But Mr. Randolph, very important. Another interesting civil rights person from Durkeeville is this man right here, Rutledge Pearson. Rutledge Pearson was a longtime teacher at Stanton. He was also instrumental in agitating for civil rights. Very interesting is that he got an award for nonviolence, but he was also the leader of the local street gang, the Boomerangs. Always wondered how he managed that. Other people from Durkeeville, these two, Sally Mathis and Mary Singleton, were both the first 2 blacks women to be elected to the city council. So they're very important to us. This man up at the top here is James Weldon Johnson, who was born on the Durkeeville-La Villa line, so both of us claim him. He was born and raised on Lee Street, and that's kind of right in the middle of both of them. He was a diplomat, a poet, an author many times over. He was the first principal of Stanton High School. He was instrumental in making it a high school before it was just a school. And he also wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing in 1901. And it was performed for the first time at Stanton High School in honor of Booker T. Washington's birthday. He was here on a visit. Mm-hmm. He wrote words. His brother, Rosamond Johnson, wrote the music. So those two both are from the Durkeeville area. I'll show you. Durkeeville also had their share of interesting service folks. Here's a picture of the first black postman in town. And these guys, the first black policemen. Now, the black policemen, this is segregation days. They were not allowed to dress downtown. They had to have their own office and report to the white officers downtown, but they weren't allowed to go downtown. So they had their own offices. Their first office was at the base of the Jefferson Street pool. They since moved into a house over the Blodgett subdivision. This lady here is Eartha White. And this is her mother, Clara. Eartha White is a philanthropist whose efforts are still being felt to this day. The Eartha White Home, also the Eartha White Hospital, and the Clara White Mission downtown, which is named after her mom.
Got it. Yes.
So, Durkeeville Arts, that's what we're talking about next.
I have a quick question.
Yes, certainly.
The axe handle.
Oh, I didn't mention axe handle. Sorry, I should have done that. Yeah. Okay, speaking of the Negro Leagues, this is a picture of another lady who lived here in Durkeeville. Her name is Mavian Johnson. She was one of 2 black female pitchers in the Negro Leagues. And she had an 87-mile-an-hour fastball that caught many people looking. She played for the Indianapolis Clowns. And that's a story all by itself. The Clowns, there was a whole secondary league of the Negro Leagues called the Clown League. And when I say clown things, think of the Harlem Globetrotters. Similar is baseball. The only one that played at the top level were the Indianapolis Clowns. And but several things from the Clown Leagues have made it into modern baseball as well. For example, Pepper, the idea of warming up before the game by catcher takes the ball, he throws it to first, throws it to second, throws it to third and back. That was done from the Clown. That was borrowed from the Clown Leagues. That was something that they put together. So that's Mamie Johnson. She's also known as Peanut. Okay, I think that pretty much covers this. What do you think? Durkeeville and the arts, because there's a lot of artists in Durkeeville that are very important. Like this organ comes from the family of Jackie Davis. This is a picture of him here and here. Jackie Davis was the very first person to ever put jazz organ together. He was known for his organ stylings in jazz. He's got many albums about jazz, the Hammond organ in jazz. It was groundbreaking at the time. This man here and up there, Billy Moore, also from Durkeeville. Billy Moore was known as the drummer's drummer. He even has a school to teach new drummers how to do their trade. One of his most famous students you may have heard of, his name is Ringo Starr. And he was actually on television. If you watch the old I Love Lucy show. You never watched I Love Lucy? Oh, go home and rent it right now on Netflix. But in I Love Lucy, which also had a prominent Latino, Desi Arnaz. And Desi Arnaz had a band, and he played the conga drums and he sang. And in his band, when the camera would pan out on his band, Billy Moore would be doing the drumming. So he was there in the back. Sorry, point. Oh, then this man, Charlie Haas Singleton. He's a Durkeevillian. Charlie Haas Singleton wrote over 200 songs, including such ditties as Strangers in the Night, which you may have heard of from Frank Sinatra, and also Spanish Eyes. He was the first black artist to maintain control of his own songs, so he became quite well-to-do. He was famous around town. Every year he brought the Follies to the stadium. Every year he would work on Ashley Street and several of the spots. And his granddaughter is our vice president. So, yeah, Charlie Haas Singleton. He's a cool dude. These guys, the Four Speeds, are Durkeeville's group of doo-wop during the 50s. They were a doo-wop group. That was their number one song right there, The Girls Back Home. This lady, Alpha Moore, was the lady who put the Stanton chorus on the map. She literally took the chorus all over the world on tours, and she was at Stanton there for many years. So, movies still ahead. In the 1980s, the old projects from the 30s were beginning to get dilapidated. The city came in, and the city housing committee completely demolished them and rebuilt them. And they're recalled Durkee Oaks, and they're down by the stadium. If you drove by the stadium, you probably saw them.
Yeah, we saw them.
But Durkee Oaks are the site of where the original projects were. This is the new version, and they are much better now. They are, and you can tell it's a very nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, okay, and then this is about the Durkeeville Historical Society history itself. This is missing several pictures. We haven't got them up yet. But this is our first president, and the Durkeeville Historical Society was founded in 1998 to preserve and tell the story of the Durkeeville community. As you can tell, I hope, there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of interesting things that have happened. So, this is just a jersey with several of the Negro League's pit patches on it. Here's the Kansas City Monarchs, the Black Giants, the Birmingham Black Barons, the Brooklyn, I forget what their team was, the Baltimore Black Sox, and others. This is, we'll talk about, I got another great picture. Sure.
Was this the time when a black, like a local black gang came and started?
Yes.
And then the police wanted to come?
Okay,
I
yeah.
remember reading about that, yeah.
That was the next thing. The next thing I was going to say. This mob was going through the town, beating anything black they saw. One of the people who narrowly escaped being beaten was our former sheriff, Matt Glover. He was working downtown at the time. No cops to be seen until a local Durkeeville gang, the Boomerangs, the ones that Rutledge Pearson were the head of, they appeared downtown and started taking the accent away and beating on the white people. And then the police showed up. And the police started arresting the Boomerangs.
Oh, man.
But at least it stopped the riot. So, and that was one of the few times that Jacksonville ever got on the national news, and they were very embarrassed. Thank you for visiting the Durkeeville Historical Society Center, and please come again and come and visit, and we will try to further help you learn more about Durkeeville.